You are tuned in to another edition of Americana Music Profiles, brought to you by Americana Rhythm Music Magazine and AmericanaMusicMagazine.com. I'm your host, Greg Tutwiler. Let's jump right in to the next exciting interview. Anya Hinkle's distinctive vocals sets the tone for the Ashville-based Appalachian roots band Tellico. Tellico has a new album, Woven Waters, and Anya is my guest on this edition of Americana Music Profiles. Hi, Anya. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Good to get a chance to catch up with you and learn a little bit more about the band Tellico. Where am I talking to you from?
Well, I'm right here in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Hotbed of all kinds of cool music.
Yes, it seems to be growing every year. You know, more and more people come in here for various reasons, and it's a good place to be.
Is that obviously new home? Is that where you're from, or did you relocate yourself?
I've been here now about 12 years.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Blacksburg, Virginia, so not too far away. I spent a lot of years out in California and other places, but kind of came back here to be closer to Appalachian roots music, and also it's just being in such a vibrant community full of musicians and artists and just a lot of great folks. It's a good place for sure.
How did music start for you?
Well, I played music as a kid. My mom and stepfather were both cellists and like orchestral, classical type music, and I grew up playing violin, and I played. I sang in the church choir, and I played some guitar in high school. I started getting really into bluegrass and Americana, what we now call Americana. In high school, my first love was Norman Blake and Tony Rice. And, then I started getting into some of the old in the way stuff, and a lot of that music was a big influence for me. But definitely Norman Blake was it for me in the beginning. I also liked a lot of blues music, and I don't know, just started getting inspired in high school through friends and others. So I kind of had a mishmash of musical influences, but didn't really do too much with music then. As a young person, I went off to college and I got into other stuff. I was into cycling and rock climbing and every other thing. Mm-hmm. But I kind of came back to music. I kind of got my guitar back and my fiddle back and wandered into a bluegrass instrument shop in Berkeley, California, called the Fifth String, and I just started picking it over there and jamming with those guys and got really into it, and I thought, what am I doing out here? I'm going home. But I'm still real close to those California folks and really appreciate their supporting me, as I was getting started, and really thinking about them right now. It's just so tragic what's happened with the fires out there, and I was just out there myself, so I could see it's a real mess. Wow,
yeah, certainly. A lot of folks are, and it seems to be happening more and more, and so certainly a lot of thoughts and well wishes going out to those folks, if for any of those that may be connected as they're listening to this, for sure. Blacksburg is what regionally for you for music? What were your influences in that part of Virginia when you were being exposed to bluegrass and Americana?
I think, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was a different time. Bluegrass and old-time music weren't, as well recognized back then, and I think it was much more stratified, and so I really wasn't exposed to it like I might have expected growing up. But when I came back, certainly I really got into old time music particularly, and I went to all the fiddlers conventions and wanted to really get to know that repertoire. And actually, the first CD I ever made was on a label called The Crooked Road, which is a Virginia heritage kind of label.
Yeah. And
they just had heard me and my singing partner Jackson Cunningham just singing over at Floyd Fest actually, and we cut an album down in southwestern Virginia. It's an old time duet singing album, and that was kind of my first recording project. So cool. From there, I kind of have always incorporated some old time elements and bluegrass elements into what I do, and in recent years have gotten sort of more into folk Americana type songwriting, and so it's just kind of all, grown and changed through the years, I guess. But that's started coming back after I left California. I really got interested in the old time scene, and still really am so overwhelmed and impressed by just the body of work there and the depth and subtleties involved with making that music sound it is, and how many different styles there are, and all of that is more than I'll ever master, but I certainly appreciate it, and I love what people are doing with it. So
where did tell me about the band Tellico? Where did that come from for you? How long have you guys been together, and what brought that together?
When I moved to Asheville, like many bands, including, I was just listening to an interview today with Town Mountain, talking about how they all met at the Jack of the Wood Jam. Jack of the Wood's a great little Irish pub here in town, and they've had a bluegrass jam going on for probably going on 3 decades. And I know that I met a bunch of people there. We formed a band called Delia Low.
Sure. Yeah.
That recorded about, I think, 4 albums. The last one was on Rebel Records, which was out of Charlottesville and Floyd, Virginia. Yeah. And so a lot of music, Virginia roots there too. But yeah, Delia Low. We had a song and an album. We had an album called Tellico, because I had written a song called Plains of Tellico. It was a song that I had been moved to write, just spending some time out in that part of western North Carolina, East Tennessee, and just anyway, I wrote this song, Plains of Tellico, and it included some of Tellico's members. That band dissolved, but when we restarted, it included myself and 2 members of Delia Low, Stig Stiglitz and Aaron Balance on dobro, and anyway, so the 3 of us wanted to start a project, and kind of just floated that name, and it stuck. We brought in actually a guy that had been with Town Mountain, Jed Willis, and he's a mandolin player. So yeah, it's a very Asheville band, and we've all been together a long time in various forms. So that's a group for this most recent album, and one other previously called Relics and Roses.
Right. And you guys have been together how long?
We started in 2014.
Okay.
And our first album, Relics and Roses, came out 2015. And we've been touring behind that, but really gearing up to make a new album and trying to figure out how to do that financially and how to do that artistically. And finally, we were able to put it all together last year, and so we're just able to release it now. So it's been a labor of love and a long time coming.
And we're talking about the album Woven Waters, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that, I guess, officially releases, I think I read, the 15th of December, is that right?
Released the 9th, so just this past weekend.
Okay, all right, awesome. So it's already out. Cool. And are you guys touring that now then?
Yeah, so we'll be kind of supporting that album, for the next, year, 6 months or so. Yeah. We do have an album release show in January with our producer from that project, Mr. John Doyle, who's a phenomenal Irish musician that's any notable Irish recording that you've heard in the past 20 years, he's been on it. I mean, he's played with everybody. And also really well known in Americana circles with Tim O'Brien and
right, yeah,
Mary Chapin Carpenter, Joan Baez, Jerry Douglas, you name it. So we were really lucky to get his involvement and do a couple shows with him to support the album.
I was looking at the press sheet, and a statement kind of caught my attention. I'm wondering if you'll recall it, and if you can expound on it a bit. It's talking about the music for the new band, the new album, and relates that you guys blending bluegrass sensibilities with British Isles influences. Where does that British Isles influences come in?
Well, one thing we wanted to do with this album was kind of get out of the typical way of picking through breaks that follow the verse's chord progression, and just get out of some of these things that you might expect, and actually writing some melodic parts for the instrumentalists that go in a different direction from the vocals. Just bringing in chord inversions and other things to just kind of make a little more depth and color to the emotional spectrum of everything. And what John does is that's his whole bag. He's such an incredible instrumentalist, and he has so many ideas in terms of writing melodic parts, in terms of creating dynamics, and especially creating drive and rhythm that keep things really interesting and engaging. So those were all things. I don't know so much of a British Isles sound. You may hear some things just because, when you hear John's music, it just sounds like Ireland.
Yeah,
and
okay. Yeah.
So the kinds of ideas that he helped develop for us, in some cases, you might, knowing that he was involved, you might hear a little bit of that.
Sure. Okay.
But it's certainly not a Celtic album, and but we have really benefited from some of the things that make Celtic music really interesting. And like I was just saying, some of the chords and the rhythmic things that happen often in Irish music, we were able to kind of adopt those, but in our own musical statements. So,
do you find it's harder or easier for a band now to establish identity? Obviously Asheville, some have referred to it as the new Nashville, and there's so much good music and there's so many good musicians, and it seems like bands have kind of become interchangeable almost at times, with different group artists playing with different bands and different bands getting together and creating supergroup versions. And I wonder if it makes it, does that make it more fun, or is it harder to establish an identity in that mix?
You mean in the sense of like an Asheville sound?
Well, or for Tellico, or because obviously we're talking about you guys and your music, but with so much music out there and so many more options and opportunities for artists to participate in bands, it seems like there's this all kinds of music coming out, and I just wonder if it makes it harder for a band to kind of find that needle in the haystack identity, where it's like, oh yeah, that's Tellico, you know it when you hear it, kind of thing.
Well, yes, I'd say all that, and it's fluid. Everything's fluid, and people are sharing ideas and collaborating, and I think that's what keeps music exciting. Nobody wants to hear something that's locked in and doesn't change, and some of these collaborations with two different artists from two different genres, for example, or bringing in two well-known artists to collaborate is really exciting and fun. And I think those are the kinds of things that do keep it fresh.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you do develop something from playing with somebody for a long time, and all of us have been in bands together for going on. Some of us. I mean, I think Jed and Stig were in a band together before I mean, I want to say almost 15, 16 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So, some of this stuff goes way back.
Sure.